Welcome to Snail's Story, where slow stories are told with a full heart and love always finds its way. How's your day going? Wherever you are, we hope this story brings you a quiet moment of peace amidst all the noise. Not all families begin with a wedding or shared blood. Some begin with trust, forgiveness, and the kind of hug that comes a little late, but just in time. So grab a warm cup of tea, find your quiet corner, and let's follow Mael and Elias to the end of their journey, where home isn't a place they found, but something they built. One choice, one embrace, one morning at a time. Winter winds rush through the narrow streets of Larmont, a seaside town where gusts seem determined to sweep away the last traces of autumn. On his way out from a meeting with Swiss investors, Elias Rowe, CEO of Luxon Biotech, stopped in front of an old bookstore, the same one he used to frequent as a child. And right at that familiar corner, the world around him came to a sudden halt. A woman, bundled in a worn-out coat, sat hunched on the icy sidewalk. Beside her were two children, a boy and a girl about 4 or 5 years old. The boy clutched a small cardboard box with a handwritten sign. "Please help. We need bread." Elias froze in place. Her face was thinner, her eyes dulled with exhaustion, but there was no mistaking who she was. Mael Varenne, the first girl he ever loved, his high school sweetheart. Fierce, brilliant, unforgettable. She had once been the top literature student in the state, while he was the aloof rich boy who spent his nights coding and his days pretending not to feel too much. Elias stepped forward slowly, cautiously. "Mael?" She turned her face away, avoiding his gaze. "I'm sorry. You've got the wrong person. It's you." His voice softened. "It's Elias." Mael said nothing, only pulled the children closer to her. She no longer had the glow of the girl who once read poetry on graduation day, only a silence so sharp it stung. "Let me help," Elias said gently, offering his hand. "Just one warm meal, a place to stay. You don't have to be ashamed." Mael shook her head. "No, we're fine." The children stared at him with curious eyes. Elias crouched down and pulled a chocolate bar from his coat pocket, offering it to the boy. "Here you go. It'll warm you up more than the night ever will." The boy hesitated, then smiled. A small, shy smile, but it made Elias's heart ache. Mael quickly stood and took both children by the hand. "Thank you, but we have to go." She pulled her hood up and hurried them into a narrow alleyway behind the building. Elias remained frozen on the sidewalk, the cold biting at his skin. And all the memories came flooding back. 10 years ago, Elias and Mael had been the golden couple at St. Ellis High. She was the honor student, he the computer prodigy. They had planned to attend university together in the capital, dreaming of an ambitious, independent life. But then came his mother, Genevieve Rowe. She intervened before the dream could take flight. To her, Mael was a nobody, the daughter of a schoolteacher and a flower vendor, not someone worthy of the sole heir to the Rowe legacy. Elias, just 18 at the time, chose silence. He walked away without a word, without goodbye. Mael waited for him at the train station on move-in day, but he never came, and everything fell apart. Elias could still see it. Mael standing in the rain, eyes red, clutching the journal they once shared. While he sat inside the car, watching from behind the glass, fists clenched so hard they bled. Now, years later, they were in the same city again, but the gap between them was wider than ever. She sat on the sidewalk, while he stood in a skyscraper. That night, Elias didn't return to his penthouse. Instead, he went back to his office. He opened his laptop and searched her name. Nothing. No work records, no social media, as if she had disappeared from the world. He leaned back in his chair, the desk lamp casting long shadows across his face. He couldn't let her vanish again. "Not this time," Elias whispered to himself. "This time, I'm not walking away." From the moment Elias saw Mael curled up on the frozen sidewalk of Larmont, the image burned itself into his mind. He couldn't shake it. not even with million-dollar contracts or glittering charity galas. That night, back in his luxury apartment, he opened the cabinet and poured himself a glass of whiskey. But it did nothing to warm the sharp ache in his chest. He didn't know how long he tossed and turned. All he knew was that before dawn broke, Elias had already picked up the phone and called his personal assistant, Levi Chen, the one man, who never asked unnecessary questions. "I need you to find someone for me," Elias said, voice hoarse. "Her name is Maëlle Varenne. She has 2 kids, twins, a boy and a girl. I need to know where they are, how they're doing. But please, don't let her find out it's from me." Levi only replied, calm and efficient. Understood. Within hours, Levi sent him the address. Elias drove there himself. The place was a run-down lot, right next to an abandoned cemetery. Rusted sheet metal served as roofing. Inside, it was pitch black and damp. Through a gap in the wall, Elias saw Maëlle laying a worn blanket over the 2 children. No beds, no electricity, just the 3 of them huddled together in the dark. His chest tightened like a vice. That same afternoon, Elias used an alias to rent a small unit in a transitional housing complex in Claymore District. It wasn't luxurious, but it had running water, warm beds, a working heater, and a box of used toys Levi had picked up from a local donation center. Elias gave clear instructions: pay for everything, stock the kitchen, leave the address, in the public mailbox. Do not let her know it's from me. That night, Maëlle and her children were quietly relocated by a volunteer social worker, a move Elias had planned down to the last detail. The kids each had their own bed. Maëlle had a small warm kitchen and a few clean sets of clothes. It wasn't perfect, but it was safe. For a while. 3 days later, while tidying the kitchen cabinets, Maëlle stumbled across a note. It was never meant to be found. A letter Levi had written, but forgot to destroy. The handwriting was unmistakable. She confronted the building manager. The truth unraveled. That same night, just as Elias stepped out of a charity event at City Hall, Levi called. "She knows." Elias drove straight to Claymore. The hallway lights on the 4th floor were still on when he arrived. As he reached the door, voices leaked from inside. Raised, angry, hurt. "You think I'm some beggar, with no pride left?" Maëlle's voice shook with fury and shame. The door burst open. She stood there, clutching a suitcase. The children were in bed behind her, coughing softly under a heap of blankets. "I don't need your charity," she shouted. "I can survive without your pity." Elias didn't yell back. He didn't flinch. He simply stepped into the doorway and looked her straight in the eyes glassy with rage and humiliation. "Maëlle, I didn't do this out of pity. I did it because you were once a part of my life, an important one, and because those 2 kids, they don't deserve to spend another night like that." She bit her lip. Her eyes were red. The air grew heavy around them, filled only with the sound of breathing, fast and sharp from anger. After a long silence, she turned away, hands trembling on the handle of the suitcase. "I'll stay," she whispered, "but only for the kids." That night, for the first time in 10 years, Elias and Maëlle sat together in the same room. The tiny kitchen was dimly lit by a flickering overhead bulb. Maëlle poured 2 cups of tea, handed one to him, then sat quietly across the table. Elias didn't speak. He waited for her to start. She stared into her cup, voice low and hesitant. "After you disappeared back then, I tried to move on. I went to college. I thought if I stayed busy enough, I'd forget you." A pause. Then she continued, her voice cracking. "I fell in love with someone. Thought he was real, but the moment he found out I was pregnant, he left. No words. Just gone. Just like you." Elias clenched his hand around the warm mug. "I came home to find my father had suffered a stroke, and my mother was diagnosed with late-stage cancer. I dropped out of school to take care of them, but neither of them lived long enough to see the twins born." Her voice grew faint. "No degree, no job, no home. I've been moving from city to city ever since, doing everything I could so my children wouldn't starve." She let out a bitter laugh, dry, hollow. "I used to have dreams, Elias. I wanted to teach literature. I wanted to write. I wanted a little house with a garden. But in the end, all I have are 2 hands and 2 kids to protect." She looked up at him, eyes rimmed red. "I don't want pity. I just want to survive." Elias didn't know what to say. In front of him was Amel, completely transformed. No longer the dreamy girl he once knew, but a quiet, fierce mother, a small flame that refused to die out in the storm. He said only one thing, barely above a whisper: "I'm sorry for walking away." On Monday morning, the twins put on school uniforms for the very first time. Their eyes lit up at the sight of desks, blackboards, books, and other kids their age. The homeroom teacher gently took the little girl's hand and smiled. "Welcome to class, sweetheart. We're going to learn lots of fun things together." Mel stood at a distance, silently watching. Her throat tightened when she saw her shy son lift his hand to wave at the teacher. Her daughter skipped toward a girl who was drawing with crayons, apparently another budding artist. It wasn't a fancy private school or some prestigious academy, just a modest public school near their temporary housing complex, with a small courtyard, a shady old tree, and creaky swings that squeaked in the wind. But Elias knew. This was exactly what Maëlle needed. Her pride ran deep. If he had enrolled the kids in an elite school with sky-high tuition, she would have rejected the gesture immediately, seeing it as a burden. She would have walked away, not because she was ungrateful, but because she couldn't bear to owe anyone too much. So Elias did everything quietly, and just enough. That afternoon, he invited her out for tea at a little shop near the park. No commanding tone, no pressure. Elias spoke softly now, even hesitantly. "I have a suggestion. If you don't like it, you can say no. No hard feelings." Maëlle looked at him, fingers curled around the warm ceramic mug. "What kind of suggestion?" Elias slid a flyer across the table, an admissions brochure from a local private college. The program was in early childhood education, the same major she had once dreamed of but never pursued because of her circumstances. "I just thought, if you still want to study, maybe now's the time." Maëlle froze. She hadn't expected that, or for him to remember. She told him once, years ago, on a rainy afternoon, how she wanted to be a preschool teacher someday, how much she loved the sound of children's laughter. She whispered, barely audible, "I don't have the money." "I know," Elias said gently, "but there's a way." He took out a second document, a job application for a position at one of his company's branch offices. Nothing flashy, just a basic admin role, organizing files, answering calls, taking meeting notes. "I've spoken to the department head. They'll train you. The schedule's flexible so you can attend classes, and you'll earn a regular salary like everyone else." Before she could protest, Elias added, as if anticipating her thoughts, "You can see it as returning the favor. You're not in debt. You're working. We're just helping each other." Silence. Mel lowered her gaze. She held the paper carefully, as though it might disappear if she wasn't careful. What sounded simple to him stirred something deep in her. She had spent so long surviving, burying her dreams just to feed her children. No one had ever said her dreams still had a place in the world. Slowly, she nodded. "I'll give it a try." Life changed after that. Each morning she dropped the kids off at school. By midday she was in the office working alongside a few kind co-workers. At night she attended general education classes for returning students. She was busy, exhausted even, but she felt truly alive. Every day brought something new to learn, a challenge to meet, a reason to smile. Elias didn't show up often, but when he did, he always brought something thoughtful. A textbook she needed, a hot meal so she wouldn't have to eat instant noodles, or a scribbled drawing from her daughter that read, "Uncle Elias is our gentle giant." One afternoon while Maëlle was rearranging her desk, Elias walked in and paused in surprise. She was standing on a chair, adjusting the office wall clock. He hurried over. "What are you doing? You could fall." She grinned. "I just wanted to be on time. I missed a deadline yesterday and got a warning." Elias laughed. "Looks like you're turning into a real employee." She stepped down, slightly flustered. "To be honest, I haven't felt useful in a long time." He looked at her, deeply, steadily. "You've always been useful. No one ever took the time to see it, that's all." That evening, Elias returned to his car with an unreadable smile on his face. He glanced at a candid photo Levi had taken earlier, Maëlle and the kids laughing together on the school lawn. Something inside him was shifting. It wasn't pity. It wasn't responsibility. It was something else entirely. It was belief. That sometimes a closed door isn't the end of something. It's just the start of something better. That afternoon, Maëlle was in the kitchen, fiddling with a jar of dried herbs, when a loud pop came from the bathroom. The lights flickered, then went out completely. She sighed. The old wiring, again, probably overloaded. She was about to call an electrician when her phone buzzed. A message from Elias. He was on his way to drop off a comic book, the one her daughter had casually mentioned loving the other day. For some reason, her heart fluttered. When Elias arrived, Maëlle hesitated, then asked, "Do you know how to fix wiring?" He raised an eyebrow. "I'm no superhero, but I can try." He rolled up the sleeves of his white shirt, climbed onto a chair, screwdriver in hand. As he tinkered with the light fixture, he chatted with the little girl sketching on the floor. Maëlle hovered nearby, unsure, occasionally handing him a flashlight or steadying a wire. A few minutes later, the light came back on. The boy clapped in delight. "Uncle Elias is a real superhero!" Mel blushed. "I owe you dinner." Elias tilted his head playfully. "Then how about a home-cooked meal tonight?" Dinner was simple: mac and cheese, chicken soup, and a tossed salad. But to Elias, it was the best meal he'd had in years. No wine, no linen napkins, no polished cutlery, just two laughing kids. A microwave that beeped when the soup was hot, and the smell of melting cheese lingering in the air. He sat at the table, watching Maëlle move around the kitchen, and something in his chest softened like quiet water. While Maëlle washed dishes, Elias sat cross-legged on the carpet. The boy tried to sound out letters on a milk carton, while the girl drew their dog from her favorite comic. "I can't remember what letter P looks like," the boy pouted. Elias repeated patiently, "P, like Papa if you ever want to call someone that." The boy grinned. "I don't have a papa." Elias paused, then gently touched the boy's chest. "But maybe someone out there is learning how to be one. Just for you." That night when Elias left, Maëlle stood quietly at the door for a long time after he was gone. In the days that followed, they ran into each other more often, though never by design. Once the kitchen faucet began leaking, and Elias rolled up his sleeves again. Another time, Maëlle texted him in the middle of the night. The girl had a fever. She didn't expect anything, but he showed up anyway, with medicine, warm porridge, and a brand-new teddy bear. Then there were the nameless moments, walking through the grocery store together, sitting on a park bench while waiting for school to let out, or quietly sharing a lukewarm cup of coffee by the sandbox. Maëlle began to grow used to his presence. Not as a savior, not as a shadow from the past, but as something more steady, familiar. She had once believed she could never trust love again, but little by little, Elias was proving her wrong. With every quiet look, every bite of food he passed to the kids, every story he read to them before bed. One late evening, after the twins had fallen asleep, Maëlle stepped out onto the balcony. Elias was still there, sitting in the corner chair, his coat draped over the back. He was staring out toward the distant lights, his voice low and thoughtful. "It's been a long time since I had a home-cooked meal." Mel glanced over, surprised. "What do you mean?" "At my house there were always housekeepers," he said. "My parents ate separately. Once I started attending work functions, I don't think I've ever really sat down at a proper dinner table again." She said nothing. The night breeze stirred her hair. He added after a moment, "Lately I've realized something. I've spent years living in luxurious rooms. That felt utterly empty. But here," he turned slowly to look at her, "here there are the clinks of forks, kids fighting over toys, and a woman who grinds her teeth when she's too tired to notice. Here, there's life," Maël laughed. "I grind my teeth?" Alia smirked. "Maybe not, but you do purse your lips when you're stressed." They laughed together. And for Maël, that smile wasn't out of habit. It came from a place deep inside her, a place that hadn't been warm in a long time. It was the feeling of being seen, truly seen, without having to become anyone else. On a crisp, late winter morning, Maël stepped out of the auditorium, diploma in hand. Her hair was tied back, her old coat sleeves rolled up, and her eyes shone with a quiet resolve Elias hadn't seen in any woman before. No flowers, no applause, just two children waiting on the front steps, each holding a hand-painted sign that read, "Mom is our hero." Elias stood at a distance, hands in his coat pockets, silently watching. He didn't step in, but the pride in his eyes was impossible to miss. A few weeks later, Maël landed a job at a company that designed educational materials for children. She didn't get the job through favors or connections, but through the hard-earned skills and work ethic she had cultivated over the past year. When Elias received her text, it was just one simple line. "I got the job. Thank you for believing in me from the start." He smiled without even realizing it. That afternoon, Maël asked to meet Elias in private. At a small cafe near her apartment, she slid an envelope and a folded note across the table. He opened it. It was the apartment key, along with a handwritten message. "I think it's time to give this back." Elias looked up, blinking. "You found a new place?" She nodded. "A small studio near the park. Close enough to pick up the kids. Far enough not to bother you anymore." He studied her quietly, then said softly, "Maël, you've never been a burden in my life." She smiled faintly, but didn't answer. After moving out, Maël's life grew busier. The new job came with more pressure than she expected, and raising two kids on top of that left her little time to breathe. So, for the first time, she reached out to Elias. "Can you pick up the kids for me today? I don't really trust anyone else." A few minutes later he replied, "I'm already on my way." From that day on, Elias became the kids' unofficial, but very willing, after-school ride. Over time it became a habit. Maël didn't even need to text him anymore. Elias simply showed up each afternoon. Some days, he came bearing 2 cups of hot cocoa. Other times, he waited at the school gate holding a hand-drawn sign that said, "Uncle Elias is the coolest driver in the world." The bond between him and the children grew stronger, effortlessly, naturally. Maël also grew used to calling Elias in the evenings to let him know she'd be late. The calls, which started as 2-minute updates, often stretched into 30-minute conversations about everything and nothing. "Do you think she should take art classes? Someone at work brought waffle cookies today. I used to love those as a kid. How do moms manage to work full-time and still stay sane?" And Elias always picked up, never sounding tired, never distracted. No matter where he was, in a meeting or eating alone, whenever her name lit up his screen, he answered with the same calm, warm voice. "I'm here." One day Mel's son fell during recess. The first person he called wasn't his mother. It was Elias. When Maël arrived at the school, she found Elias kneeling on the ground, gently cleaning the boy's scraped knee while babbling nonsense to make him laugh. She didn't interrupt. She didn't say anything. She just stood there and felt something inside her quietly begin to mend. That afternoon, while the kids napped, Maël stood in the kitchen, holding a glass of water. One thought lingered in her mind. How long had it been since she felt truly safe? Not the kind of safety where someone takes care of you, but the kind where you trust, deep down, that if one day you fall apart, someone will stay. Elias had never said he loved her. She had never imagined falling in love again, but day by day, with each small act of kindness, every soft-spoken word over the phone, Every patient moment, every tight hug the kids gave him, it all whispered to her. Some kinds of love don't need a name to exist. The message came on a rainy afternoon. My mother just returned from Canada. She wants to meet you. Maëlle stared at the screen, her heart tightening. She wasn't surprised. She had known this moment would come sooner or later. She just wasn't ready, emotionally or otherwise. Elias's mother, Geneviève, was not an ordinary woman. She was the founder of a major investment fund, had once led multi-million-dollar deals, and was known for being fierce, sharp, and entirely uncompromising. In her world, everything had a standard. Friends, business partners, even her sons. Romantic interests had to come with clear backgrounds, appropriate social standing, and no extra baggage. So, when she learned her son was involved with a woman named Maëlle, a woman with no formal career, 2 children from a previous relationship, and a history of surviving on his support, she flew home immediately. Less than 48 hours after the message, Geneviève was standing outside Maëlle's former apartment. No prior notice, no need for repeated knocks. When Maëlle opened the door, their eyes met. And in that moment, Maëlle knew. She had been recognized. "You're Maëlle Lemoine," Geneviève said slowly, her tone not angry, but certain. "You're the one I once asked to leave Elias, aren't you?" Maëlle said nothing. Geneviève stepped inside, uninvited. Her eyes scanned the apartment and stopped on a child's painting hanging on the wall. Elias reading a book to 2 children, drawn by Maëlle's daughter. "And now you have 2 children." The words fell into the air like a verdict. They sat across from each other at the tiny kitchen table. Maëlle had never felt so small. Geneviève folded her arms. Her gaze was icy, but her voice disturbingly calm. "I mean no offense. I just want to be clear. I lack nothing. Not money, not influence. But I do lack one thing. Leniency." She looked Maëlle straight in the eyes. "I spared you once. But if you continue to stay in Elias's life, I won't hesitate to use every means necessary to remove your children from it. Not because they've done anything wrong, but because you do not belong in my world." Maëlle didn't respond. Her hands were clenched white against her lap. Geneviève stood reaching for her expensive leather handbag. "I'm not asking you to leave immediately. I'm giving you 2 days. And don't tell Elias. I don't want him using emotions to fight. Logic." That night, Maëlle didn't sleep. The children slept soundly, hugging the teddy bear Elias had given them. But Maëlle felt small, fragile, and entirely powerless. She had dreamed just once of building a small home for her kids, a place where they could laugh, eat well, go to school, and sleep in peace without fearing tomorrow. Elias had given her that. But now, with just one warning from his mother, everything could crumble. Mel felt no hatred, but she knew she couldn't let her children be in harm's way. Early on the second morning, Mel left the apartment. No goodbyes, no messages, no calls to Elias. She left an envelope for the landlord, with the keys inside and a short note. "Thank you for the days that almost felt like peace." Then she boarded a bus with her children, heading toward the outskirts of town, to a small cottage near a field and a white picket fence. The new house Maëlle rented had a wooden porch, wildflowers in the yard, and a red brick kitchen. Far from the city, far from Elias, but closer to the kind of peace she believed she could protect. She told the children, "We'll live here for a while. There are sparrows, butterflies, and even a little lake." They didn't ask many questions. They were used to moving. Only her daughter whispered that night, "Will Uncle Elias come here, Mama?" Maëlle brushed the girl's hair back and smiled. "Maybe, if he can find the way." But she didn't allow herself to hope. In this new place, Maëlle tried to start over. She worked remotely for her old company, tended to a small garden in the evenings, and reminded herself daily, "Don't think about Elias." But every night, when the sun went down and the children were asleep, she found herself staring out the window, toward the city, toward the man who once said, "It's been a long time since I knew what a real home-cooked meal felt like." And now, all she could say in her heart was, "I'm sorry, Elias. I wasn't strong enough to protect you from your mother, but I can protect my children from the world." One early spring morning, Genevieve attended the ribbon-cutting ceremony for a new charity center funded by her foundation, located in a quiet suburban town. Everything went according to plan, until the end. As she was leaving, her high heel slipped on a damp stone step. She fell, her vision blurred, and her glasses flew into a nearby flower bush. "Excuse me, is someone there?" Her voice was faint as she tried to steady herself with the railing. In vain. And then 2 small hands appeared. "Can I help you, ma'am?" A little girl with brown hair and bright, alert eyes stood beside her. Next to the girl was a chubby boy fumbling to retrieve the fallen glasses from the bushes. "Did you get hurt? I have a Band-Aid." The girl quickly pulled out a duck-shaped plaster from her backpack. Genevieve chuckled, the first time she had laughed in days. She nodded and let the girl place the little bandage on the shallow scrape on her hand. "Thank you, both of you. I never thought I'd be rescued by such brave little doctors." The children giggled. Even after Genevieve was helped into her car by staff, the 2 kids stood by the curb, waving goodbye. That day, something in Genevieve's cold heart softened. From then on, every week, she sent a small gift bag to the nearby preschool, where the 2 children attended part-time. Knitted dolls, English storybooks, handwritten notes, and even almond cookies she baked herself. She signed the letters as Mrs. G, always writing, "For the 2 little angels who saved me one spring morning." What she didn't know was that those children were Maël's. And Maël, the moment she realized who the sender was, felt her heart stop. She hid the truth from her children, simply saying the gifts were from a friend of the school. She didn't dare reveal more, nor did she try to stop it. Deep down, she sensed Genevieve had changed, but not enough to handle the full truth. As for Elias, he was furious when he learned Maël had vanished without a word. He called hundreds of times, showed up at her old apartment, contacted the children's school. Nothing worked. Finally, it was his assistant, after days of tracking receipts and bank records, who discovered that Maël had moved to the suburbs, renting a small house near a local farm. Elias didn't wait another second. He drove there immediately. That afternoon, as the sun faded, Maël was taking down laundry from the line when she heard footsteps. She turned. Elias was standing there. No tie, no polished shoes. Just the Elias she remembered. Sleeves rolled up, eyes stormy. "Why did you leave without saying anything?" Maël stayed still. The wind fluttered the pale cotton dress she wore. "I don't owe you an explanation." Elias stepped closer. "I know my mother came to see you. What are you afraid of, Maël?" She clenched her hands, trying to keep her voice calm. "You know your mother wasn't wrong. I don't belong in your world. I have 2 children. I'm someone she'll never accept. I left to make things easier. For you." "No." Elias's voice dropped low. "You left because you didn't trust me. You thought I'd back down under pressure? That I'm the kind of man who obeys his mother like a puppet?" Maël turned her face away. "I don't have feelings for you, Elias. I'm grateful to you, but I don't love you." A lie, but it cut her heart like a blade. Elias froze. After a long silence, he nodded slowly. "If that's the truth, I'll leave." He turned without another word. Mel stood motionless, afraid that the slightest movement would break her. When the sound of his car finally faded, she sank onto the porch steps, buried her face in her hands, and cried for the first time in a very long while. That night, as the children asked, "Why didn't Uncle Elias come today?" Mel only smiled softly. He had something to take care of. But later, when the wind whispered through the window and the moonlight spilled into the bedroom, she whispered to herself, "I'm sorry, Elias. I love you, but I only know how to love you from afar." Since the day Maël rejected him, Elias had become unusually quiet. He no longer mentioned looking for her, never reacted when his mother brought up his future, marriage, or the question of heirs. Instead, he threw himself into work, coldly, mechanically. That worried Genevieve. She thought, perhaps Elias needed a more suitable replacement. So, at the annual Investors' Gala, she invited a young woman, Alina Crawford, the only daughter of the chairman of Virenda Corp., a well-known medical tech conglomerate. Alina was the type of woman Genevieve had always valued: beautiful, well-educated, socially adept, and even managing a small charitable foundation. Perfect on paper, and above all, Alina knew her place. "You need someone by your side," Genevieve told Elias over dinner. "Someone worthy of the role you carry." Elias didn't respond, but he didn't object either, and that, to Genevieve, meant maybe. Alina was nothing but charming, especially toward Genevieve. She frequently dropped by with herbal teas, sent handwritten holiday cards, and accompanied Genevieve to public events. Every time she smiled sweetly, linking arms with the older woman as if she were already part of the family. Genevieve, ever cautious, still had to admit, this girl knew how to inspire confidence. As for Elias, he simply didn't care. He was polite, kept his distance, and never brought up dating. But he didn't refute anything in front of his mother, and that was his first mistake. The truth began to unravel on a Friday afternoon, when Genevieve dropped by the office to personally deliver a confidential document to Elias. She stepped into the lobby, about to head straight to his floor, when she overheard Alina speaking on the phone in the lounge. "Of course I don't love him," Alina said, her voice low but clear. "But if I want control over those shares, I need to play the part. You get it. Once we're engaged, the Whitmore family's assets will slowly shift into my hands." Then her voice dropped to a whisper. "Yes, even the old lady's charity fund. I'll turn it into a PR machine for our side." Genevieve froze. Her hand went cold. Her heart pounded. She didn't say anything that day. But that night, she asked her private secretary to conduct a full investigation into the charity foundation Alina claimed to manage. What they uncovered shocked her to the core. The foundation was merely a front, a legal mask for laundering funds from shady investment sources, including those tied to unethical competition practices. Several accounts were listed under Genevieve's name, allegedly for PR purposes. She had never signed a single document. The next morning, she summoned her legal team. And by the afternoon, Elias received a message from his mother. "We need to talk about Alina." They met in Genevieve's private study. No assistants, no witnesses, just mother and son, seated across from each other like the last time Elias had stood his ground when she forced him to end things with Maëlle. Genevieve looked directly at him. "I was wrong." Elias remained silent. "I let a woman wearing a mask deceive this entire family because I thought you needed someone I approved of, but I never once asked what you wanted." He didn't reply, but his knuckles clenched. Genevieve's voice softened. "I had it investigated. Maëlle never used you. She left because I forced her to. And she's raised two incredible children." She paused. "Did you know, weeks ago, those two children helped me after a bad fall. I had no idea who they were. All I saw was kindness, manners, and warmth in their eyes." Elias looked up. "It was them?" Genevieve nodded. "Yes, and now all I can hope is that it's not too late to make things right." That evening, Elias didn't wait. He got in his car and drove straight down the highway, heading toward the quiet suburb where, once before, he had stood silently behind a white picket fence, staring at the warm glow of a kitchen light, while Maëlle prepared dinner inside. But this time he would knock on the door, not to ask for forgiveness, but to stay, no matter what the answer might be. That afternoon, the sky glowed in a strangely gentle way. The sunlight wasn't harsh but golden and soft, spilling through the white fence and falling onto the front steps where Maëlle was watering her plants. She turned as a car pulled up to the gate. Elias stepped out, not in a rush, not tense, just walking steadily, as if every step he took had always been meant for this path. Mel clenched her hands, about to head back inside, but his voice stopped her. "Don't go. I'm not here today to hear you say you don't love me." She turned. Her eyes caught the fading sunlight brushing against his shoulders. "I came to tell you, you don't need to be worthy of anyone," Elias said, his voice steady. "Not of me. Not of my name. Luxon, the company, the wealth, none of it means anything if I have to live this life without you in it." Mael said nothing. He stepped closer, his voice low but unwavering. 10 years ago you were in my heart, even if I didn't have the courage to keep you there. But from the moment you disappeared again, I knew one thing for sure. I can't lose you a second time. He paused, then spoke even softer, like a breath between them. "I love you, Mael. Not because you're strong or independent, but because you are you. You laugh, you worry, you protect people like I once wished someone would protect me." She looked down, lips pressed tight. "I don't want you to just be the woman I love. I want you to be my partner, my wife, the mother of our children, not just on paper but at every dinner table, every morning, every holiday." Mael looked up, her eyes now brimming with tears. "You're insane," she whispered. "Your mother once hated me. I left without a word. I brought with me 2 children, 2 imperfect lives." Elias stepped even closer, voice tender. "And because of that, I want to be with you." Silence. Then she laughed, a sound laced with sorrow and joy. "You think convincing your mother will be that easy?" He shrugged lightly. "Not easy. But if it's real, she'll come to understand. And if you walk beside me, then we'll face it together." Mael gave a small nod. "I love you, but I also love my children. And I'm scared they'll be hurt again. Then let me protect all 3 of you. Every day, no matter how hard it gets. If you'll just say yes." And as the sun dipped below the horizon, she stepped forward and embraced him, for the first time, without holding anything back. A few days later, Mael received a handwritten letter. The sender, Geneviève. The handwriting was sharp, the lines carefully penned, but the tone was no longer cold or haughty. Instead, it carried something unexpected, a quiet sincerity. "I know I was wrong to impose so much on Elias. If you're still there, I would like to meet you. And, if I may, I would like to meet the children." Mael read the letter, her fingers gently squeezing the edge of the page. Her heart stirred, not with fear this time, but with a glimmer of hope. Maybe this time, Geneviève truly wanted to understand. She turned to her children with a soft smile. "Shall we bake some cookies and go to the park to meet someone special?" The kids cheered with excitement. The little girl chose heart-shaped molds. The boy insisted on stars. Just like last time, that morning, their tiny kitchen filled with laughter again. The scent of butter swirled through the air, and tray after tray of cookies came out of the oven, carrying something sweeter than sugar. The belief that maybe, just maybe, a new beginning was on the way. The park, on that quiet weekend afternoon, shimmered with peace. Sunlight streamed through the oak trees, scattering golden circles across the path like nature's lipstick prints. Geneviève arrived early, sitting on her usual stone bench near the fountain. She held a book in her hands, though she didn't read a single word. Her mind fluttered, half expecting, half nervous. This was the first time she had ever requested to meet a woman she had once tried to erase from her son's life. Then came the sound of small footsteps on the cobblestones. "Madame G." She looked up. 2 children were running toward her, a little girl with a sideways ponytail and a brilliant smile, and her younger brother tightly clutching a box of cookies. A breeze swept by, carrying hints of butter and vanilla, and stirring something deep inside her, something uneasy, something tender. "You are—" She stood, looking closely at the girl's face, then to the boy beside her. A sudden lightness filled her chest. like a puzzle piece snapping into place. Could it be? Just then Maëlle appeared, holding a basket of juice. Her hair was tied back neatly. She walked slowly, calmly. Geneviève turned sharply. "There," Maëlle nodded, her voice gentle, like a quiet confession. "They're the ones who helped you that day." Geneviève sat down, stunned. All those times she had sent gifts, written letters, baked almond cookies, calling them her little angels, all of it had been for the very children she once believed didn't belong in Elias's life. Her hand trembled slightly on her lap. "I came to care for them, without even knowing." "Even felt grateful?" Maëlle said nothing. She simply placed the basket down and sat beside her. "Not too close, just enough." "I don't expect you to accept me," Maëlle said quietly. "I just don't want the kids to keep hiding their own feelings anymore." The children sat down on the grass and opened the cookie box. The little girl picked out a heart-shaped one and held it out to Geneviève. "Try one, Madame G. I remember you liked almond butter cookies." A simple sentence, yet it made Geneviève tear up, not out of sentimentality, but because, in that moment, she realized something. She had been wrong. Wrong to think only perfect people on paper could make a family. She turned to Maëlle, her voice thick. "I don't expect forgiveness, but if Elias truly chooses you, and if these two still wish to call me grandmother, then please give me the chance to begin again." Mel's hands gripped her skirt gently. Then, slowly, she nodded. "I'll try. If you're willing." Two women, one standing on opposite sides, now sat together beneath the shade of an old oak tree, sharing cookies, apple tea, and a freshly blooming trust. Summer arrived with lavender blooming in soft purple waves along the white fence of the small suburban house. But this year, the scene looked different, because everything had changed. Maëlle had officially been appointed head of early childhood development at the company, after successfully leading an educational project for underprivileged children in remote areas. Once a single mother surviving on the kindness of others, she now had a career of her own, and more importantly, a radiant confidence in her eyes. And Elias, he had turned down every proposed matchmaking dinner, every suggestion from high society. There was only one person he had been waiting for. That evening, after Maëlle's project celebration ceremony, Elias took her to the grassy hill where they had once watched fireworks the previous summer. No champagne, no evening gowns. Just a picnic blanket, a small basket of pastries, and two children hiding behind the bushes nearby, eyes gleaming with mischief, as if they already knew what was coming. Maëlle was smiling when Elias suddenly dropped to one knee. The sun set, spilled golden light across his hair, and in his hand was a simple ring, adorned with a tea-colored gem, her favorite. "I can't promise to be perfect," he said, "but I can promise to choose you every morning I wake up, every time life gets hard, every sleepless night with a sick child, every storm that tries to shake us. Mel, will you marry me?" Tears streamed down her face. She nodded, a small nod, but full of certainty. And from behind them, two little voices screamed, "She said yes! Mom said yes! Mr. Elias is going to be our dad!" Laughter echoed across the hill. The wedding took place on a peaceful Sunday morning in the garden behind Elias's family estate. No lavish displays, no media, just the people who mattered, and a lawn filled with white daisies. Mel walked out in a simple dress, holding the hands of her two children. Elias stood beneath a vine-covered arch, his eyes gentle. Just like the first time they met, it was Geneviève who took Maëlle's hand and walked her down the aisle. "I may not be perfect," she whispered, "but I'll try to be the kind of grandmother you and the children can lean on." The ceremony ended with a true family meal. Maëlle's homemade bread, desserts clumsily decorated by the kids, and Elias playing a soft tune on his guitar as dusk settled over the garden. Weeks later, the family moved into the Whitaker estate, once a symbol of distance, now their home. Mail redesigned the kitchen just the way she liked it. The children had their own rooms, a swing set in the yard, and shelves filled with fairy tales. Elias took a room upstairs, where he could see Maëlle every morning standing by the window with a cup of tea, gazing at the blooming garden like she was quietly speaking with peace itself. And Geneviève? She decided not to return to Canada. "Here," she said, "I get to hear children's laughter every morning. I've never felt warmth like this before." The children still called her Grandma G, and she had learned to tell bedtime stories without a laptop, to bake cookies without measuring everything so precisely. One afternoon, during the little girls' class presentation, the teacher asked, "Who would you like to introduce today?" She pointed at Elias, her voice shy but glowing. "That's my dad. Daddy Elias." Elias turned to Maëlle, his eyes misty, and in that moment, no more words were needed. Their family, once impossible, was now whole. Thank you for staying with Snail Story all the way to the end of this journey. If this story touched something in your heart, leave us a comment below. We'd love to hear from you. And if you've ever felt like you don't quite belong anywhere, we hope Maëlle's family reminds you, real love always finds its way back. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, so you won't miss the next story from Snail Story, where gentle things still exist.